What is Mythoard? And what's in the hoard this month? That's the topic of this video. Mythoard.com is a small website from a family-run business that collects role-playing game stuff and packages it up, and if you subscribe, you get a box each month. Currently, a subscription in the United States costs $25. They ship it to Canada. I think it's $30 and various things. The package comes and you subscribe, and they send it out on a monthly basis. So I just got my copy for the month of April, and I thought I'd cover what was in the box. So the first thing in the box is sort of, and I think this is one of the most creative parts about the box, is it's a one-sheet checklist of what's in the box, and let's say a one-page adventure. So it included a simple hand-drawn map and a description of all that. The map was interesting, and there's a chart, there's a table that's included in that. This actually was, I was surprised at this because it says what's in there. So it describes each of the 5 items that are in there, plus this one little one-page sheet. Well, it's a half sheet, and it's on thicker cardboard. But this is the map that's on the front of it, as you can see there, and it's on glossy paper, heavy glossy cardstock, and I thought that was actually kind of nice. The next thing in the package is what are called monster tokens. And it's a small little package, and the picture didn't come out very well. Got a little bit of a glare. I'm not the greatest at taking photographs of this stuff, but I thought I'd see what's in there. And if you open up the package, you find there are these there's only four little tokens. They're actually on magnetic they're magnets, so that they're little magnetic discs. They're about the size of that you would fit if you're playing with miniatures, and that's sort of the idea, that you could use them in a miniature setting. The colors looked a little washed out to me, and they're not the greatest detail. There were 4 of them. I don't think I'd ever use them, simply because I tend to game online much more frequently now than I do. It's been a long time, actually, since I've gamed in person, so I don't really have any particular use for these. They were interesting to see. When I do, I have a big game mat, but it's not magnetic. So these would sort of be like, you could use them as sort of refrigerator magnets, I guess, but they're sort of odd. It was interesting to see this stuff. The next thing in the package is a pair of Dungeon Morph dice. This is part of the Spelunker set. And there are 2 dice, so I thought I'd put the 2 dice. They're big. They're supposedly 1-inch square. I didn't measure them. But they are big. They're much bigger than other dice, as you can see as I took the picture showing the size of the dice. They're just standard cubes with interesting patterns. If you buy the whole package, I think there are 5 in a package for $20, so they're about $4 a pop. And you can also buy the PDFs of the maps that are for each side, so you can build these geomorphs. I'm not really into that kind of drawing of dungeons. I find for me, it's faster and easier to draw it myself, but I could see some people interested in it. It would allow you to do a quick roll up and figure out what you're doing just by rolling a handful of dice. So they're interesting. A couple more dice and from my big box of dice. You get a small adventure called The Miller's Blunder. It's relatively well put together. Reading through it, I haven't played this yet. Like I said, just opened this up, got looked through it. It's the artwork on the front cover and the back cover are actually pretty good. It uses the standard old style dungeon maps. It's total is 16 pages long. Well, not 18 if you include the. No, I guess you have to include the table of contents and the. Or 17 pages inside. It's it's an interesting adventure where you have to go through. It's not highly detailed. The people who did this, I'll mention a couple of issues with the typesetting. One, they did justified typesetting, which in an adventure is probably a mistake because it spreads the text. What that means is the text on the left and the right, they try and line it up inside the adventure, which is a mistake for this style of adventure because it spreads the text out and it actually is harder to read that way, harder to follow. So it's printed on reasonable paper. It's stapled together. It's a 8.5 by 11 page that's folded in half. It's not a bad little small adventure. This is what I think is probably the jewel in the package this month. This is a 1981 February-March edition of the Dungeoneers Journal, published by the Judges Guild. This was a pretty good one. I've got two interesting little quotes, and this sort of sums up part of my philosophy about the way I game. And this is from page 39 of this issue. It says, a good reason for the judge to create a complete world rather than only a dungeon is to reduce uncertainty to a level both believable and conducive to good play. A player in a world he understands can sometimes anticipate uncontrolled influences. If players know nothing about the culture, population, economics, and so on of the world, they are more vulnerable to random forces. So it gives a description of what is it that's in the article, the essence of a good war game, and it talks about why you should actually create an entire campaign and the advantages of creating an entire campaign. Then another interesting one, and it's a review of a game by Steve Jackson Games. Now you have to remember, this is in 81, and this is talking about, and the title of the game was Raid on Iran. So people don't remember some of the politics that was going on at this time, and this was right after Iran captured the American embassy and took all the hostages as captives. Took all the embassy workers as captives, and the terrorists held them that way. We held them for such a long period of time. And this was the reason that Jimmy Carter lost the election and Ronald Reagan came in. And if you're not old enough to know about that, I understand that. But it was an interesting period of time. And Steve Jackson Games basically put together a game about what would have happened if the raid had went on. The They put together, they were going to send a raid in to do various things, and there was a plane crash, and it turned into an absolute fiasco. Rather than going in and rescuing the hostages, it was just a disaster. And Steve Jackson Games jumped into the politics and created a $3 game about that. And there's a review of it, and it says the game overall is quite enjoyable. The guy says it's sort of questionable whether he should have done that. Should he have got really involved in the politics that was going on there? And but it shows that politics has always been involved in gaming. People say, oh, that we should keep politics out. They don't understand. They don't know anything about the history, that it's always been involved in there. And so that was there. But this is a very interesting addition to the package. And then we get issue number 5 of Gygax magazine. Now, I have some real mixed feelings about this one. Actually, they're not mixed. They're very standard. The first thing, and you really can't tell, just when you pick this up and you look at it, it bothers your eyes. And what do I mean by that? You really can't see in the picture that I captured there. The front cover shows heavy pixelization. It's uses an ordered dithered pattern. Basically, what happened was they took the piece of art, and the proper term is expletive deleted the artwork when they created the cover. They did it very, very badly. The cover artwork is totally screwed up, and it was done in the process, and that's through the entire publication, with one or two exceptions. This is hard to read. This is hard on the eyes to read because it's poorly set up for printing. It's poorly set up for that because they messed up the artwork. And almost all the artwork, the front cover is bad, the inside cover is done right. You flip from the outside cover to the inside cover, and it's night and day. And then you turn and look at the page just on the inside of the inside cover, and the colors are muddied, and the artwork goes back to being messed up. So this is truly a painful thing to read. The Judges Guild, because it was typeset so long ago, but it's printed on lower quality paper, and it isn't as objectionable, and it's the style of the artwork in that fits better with this type of printing. They know what's line art and what's photo art, and the line art comes out relatively well, but it's the other kind of art, they did it wrong. They set up they don't understand typography. They messed up this publication very badly, and the artwork, almost all the artwork, the line art, that's drawn with just thin lines, most of the cases is okay, but then I get to like page 22, and the line art is screwed up. And the editor, who according to the cover page is Timothy Cass, should be fired. I mean, this is printed on relatively good quality paper, and either he's contributing editor, the art director, R. Scott Taylor, should be fired. This is a firing offense for doing something like this. I worked at a company for many years dealing with typesetting and graphics and so on, and this is just totally unacceptable. They messed this up, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they did it wrong, and the artwork is muddied. The artwork is not clean. It doesn't. It's heavily pixelated. And there are so many issues with the typesetting in here that I could start really nitpicking with it. But they're amateurs. It shows the amateur. And if you go back and look at some of the early Dragon magazines, that was acceptable back in the Strategic Review and some of the early Dragon, because it fit with the style of style of the magazine, but they never screwed up the art, the advertiser's art. And actually, if I was an advertiser in the magazine, I would demand my money back because they screwed up the advertising. The advertising is done poorly too. You shouldn't screw up the advertising because they're who pay for the magazine, really, not the subscribers. It's the advertisers. And almost all the advertising art is just messed up. It's got the dithered quality. It's not half-toned correctly. And it's hard to read. Which you don't want in a print product. You want a print product should be designed to be easy to read. So this is a real disappointment. Now, the other reason I have problems with this is that maybe I mentioned this before. Gary Gygax is I didn't like, and I'll be blunt. I thought he nearly ruined Dungeons and Dragons. And it was, and I'll tell an interesting little story that this is what I remember, and this is what I was involved with. Back in the early 80s, I had written 2 video games and was trying to go for venture capital. And I knew some people who were gamers, and they knew me, and both video games and desktop gaming. And I'm writing up the business plan. We're working with a firm, going through trying to raise venture capital to form a company. And we're going to try and raise a few $1 million. So we're going through this, and I get a call from a friend who says, "Would you like to buy Dungeons and Dragons?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Gygax is trying to sell original Dungeons and Dragons." So Gary Gygax reached out to Lou Zocchi, who reached out, and Gary Gygax had just released AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And if you read through, one of the things with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was that Gary Gygax had taken, and everything had his name and his copyright, not TSR, Technical Studies Rules, whatever. It wasn't there. It was his copyright. And he was putting his name on everything so he would get the royalties. And it was both a power play and a money play. But original Dungeons and Dragons, the old white and gray brown box stuff, had other people's names on it. Arneson's name and other people's names on it. And he couldn't change that. So he wasn't going to get exclusive royalties on that. So he wanted to sell that. And what I'd heard was that he had reached out to Lou Zocchi, who was the big person in gaming at that point in time. And Zocchi was the one who really improved the quality of dice. TSR, back in those days, was selling, they were made of soft plastic dice that turned into marbles after about a year's worth of gaming, because it would wear the edges off. And Lou Zocchi was the one that I remember who introduced high impact quality dice that goes back and uses the same plastic that they used for dice in gambling in casinos, in Vegas. So that improved the quality of the dice. And Zocchi came out with his dice, and I remember buying the dice from Lou Zocchi. And Gygax, the story that was told to me was Gygax reached out to Zaki to sell OD&D because he wanted to get rid of it and kill it. And some games went to... Zaki was known for picking up games at a discount. Now, Luzaki didn't want to get involved, but he reached out to Rocky Russo, who was another avid gamer. And I got the call from Rocky because he was involved in our attempt to get capital and to form the company. And Rocky Russo had written a couple of war games like Mustangs and Messerschmitts, which was things like that. So Gygax was wanted to unload that, but so I actually was readapting the business plan and trying to pitch to venture capitalists to raise money because we were going to try and buy Dungeons and Dragons because Gygax wanted to unload it. And then the story we hear is that, and I did some research today looking through, and this isn't out there. Supposedly Gygax's wife walked in on him with a young female gamer, and that's what resulted in his divorce, which resulted in her getting stock, which resulted in him getting ousted. Now, I read some others where there's more involved to it, definitely, than that. But that was one of the ways that he lost some of his stock in the stock battle that resulted why he got taken out as running TSR. And and I was sort of disappointed because we were trying to raise the money to buy Dungeons and Dragons. They're OD&D. So that story, I don't think I've never heard. I've searched the web. Nobody else has ever mentioned it. But, and unfortunately, no one can back me up. Luzaki's gone. Rocky Russo's gone. And it was an instance that was interesting, but that was, I didn't get the venture capital, and that was a learning experience that I cherish. But Gygax was... I hold no love for the man. What he took with Dungeons and Dragons and morphed into AD&D, and the introduction of and I pointed this out in some other videos I've done. In Dungeons and Dragons, the original Dungeons and Dragons, you had law and chaos. You didn't have good and evil. It wasn't in Greyhawk. He introduced the concept of good, but evil wasn't introduced until the concept of AD&D, which was Gygax's invention. And I think that was a major mistake. The difference between law and order, order and chaos. Sorry, it's not a TV show called Law and Order, but it's lawful and chaotic. Was the relationship more of how things were ran in the universe. Law is organized and methodical and set up like that, and chaos is, chaotic. Things go on without any predetermined plan, much more random, and you do things for your own interests. There isn't the concept of good and evil. So you only had 3 alignments in OD&D. You had lawful, you had neutral, and you had chaotic. And those were the alignments. And Gygax changed that to 9. He expanded that to 9 by introducing the second dimension of good and evil, which made things complicated, which did some weird things. It changed the concept of paladin, because you had the paladin was lawful. There was no such thing as anti-paladin, because whether the paladin was for what we would call evil or good didn't matter. A paladin was a paladin. He was for law and order as opposed to chaos. And it changed that dynamic. It introduced that, and that's what I give Gygax the credit and the blame for. But he was not. I hear all these people about how wonderful he was, and I see this, and it sort of just burns on me because the gamers that I started gaming with, we all thought he was expletive deleted. Let's say we didn't think that the man was very good. He wasn't good at business. He wasn't good at gaming. He had some ideas. Don't get me wrong. Give him credit for his ideas and give him credit for doing various things. But the way he had treated Arneson, the fact that he insisted that all his stuff have his name as the copyright holder was bad for the business and the company of TSR and so on. So when I got this magazine, I would have never picked a copy of this up because I dislike this name. I dislike the name Gygax because it's there. And I know that this is his boys, and I can't blame them. Don't blame the children for the adults' sins. But I can blame them for being the publishers of this and looking at the quality of it, and it's awful. The quality of the artwork is truly egregiously bad. So that's sort of my review. Was it worth the $25? I don't think so. Part of that, I'm maybe the next one when I take a look at it. I subscribed for six issues of from Mythoard. This one was a big disappointment, in part because the Gygax magazine, I think, was, to me, actually, there might be some interesting articles. I've been looking through some of it to see if there's anything interesting in there. Thought I saw one or two things that caught my eye. It's 68 pages long, so there's probably something worthwhile in there, but it's hard to read. That's the thing that's there. That's the real detriment to this magazine, is that it will hurt your eyes. You'll get a headache from reading this stuff if you look at the artwork. It's just poorly laid out. So I've rambled on too long for this, but this was my review of the April's Mythoard. So if you like what I have to say, I encourage you to subscribe. I do these frequently. Past couple of days I've been away from it for some personal reasons, but I cover gaming, technology, and literature, and I've got the subscribe button up there. Click that. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, if you're interested in this type of stuff and you want me to do some more. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. I'll try and reply to anything. Let's put the comments down below. Thank you for listening to this video.